They laughed when she asked to train. Then they froze at the combat tattoo on her arm. She walked into the local training range with nothing but a quiet determination and a request to train alongside the best. No one expected much from the young woman with her sleeves rolled down, head bowed, and eyes focused on the floor. But when someone finally dared to challenge her right to be there, laughter broke out among the crowd. They didn't know what waited beneath her jacket. As she calmly rolled up her sleeve, the inked combat tattoo etched across her forearm caught every eye. A symbol of sacrifice and legacy that made even the most confident silence themselves. Because that tattoo wasn't just art. It was a story written in blood and resilience. One that would stop the room cold and forever change how they saw her. Just a quick little pause before I forget. If you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, please leave a like and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. I guarantee you won't want to miss it. Now let's jump back in. The shooting range smelled of hot brass and concrete dust. An open barn-style facility just outside of North Point, Texas. Humble, quiet. Locals came here more for ego than discipline. A red line marked the boundary where civilians stood behind safety glass and watched others shoot. Usually instructors or cops off shift, showing off in tank tops and tactical pants. That afternoon, no one paid attention when the girl entered. She moved like someone taught not to be noticed. Faded jeans, dusty boots, olive jacket rolled at the sleeves. She looked barely 20, maybe younger. Pale scar across her forearm. Hair tied back, expression unreadable. She stood in line quietly, watching, holding a worn duffel bag with a patch stitched over the side. A patch so faded only the most trained eyes could recognize it. A combat medic's insignia from a unit that technically no longer existed. But no one here noticed. The crowd gathered near Lane 5, where Greg Ridley, a former security contractor turned shooting coach, was mid-speech. Loud, performative, leaning into his war stories. Laughs followed every other line. She waited, silent. When he finally paused to reload, she stepped forward and spoke. "Excuse me," she said softly. "I'd like to train." The crowd turned, slowly. Some smiled. Some smirked. She didn't look like much. Definitely not Ridge's usual clientele. No gear, no sponsor patches, no chest rig. Just dusty boots and calm eyes. Ridge blinked at her, then grinned. "Oh, you shoot?" he asked, amused. "Were you just here to take Instagram photos?" Laughter rippled through the group. Not cruel, but dismissive. Like someone chuckling at a child who wandered into a gym wearing gloves 2 sizes too big. She didn't respond to the laughter. Just stood still. Calm. Unbothered. "I'd like to run a drill," she said. That was it. No explanation. No begging. No need for validation. Just a request, spoken plainly. Ridge raised his eyebrows. "Got your own weapons, sweetheart?" She nodded, slowly, then lowered the duffel bag to the ground. The laughter continued, low and easy. Someone muttered, "Let her try, man. What's the worst that could happen?" Ridge stepped back and waved toward the open lane. "Be my guest." He didn't know what he'd just allowed. But someone at the back, an older man in a weathered hat, looked at the bag, then at the girl's posture, and stopped smiling. The girl stepped forward without hesitation, her boots echoing faintly against the concrete floor. She moved without showmanship, not slow, not fast, just deliberate. No wasted movement. No flick of the wrist, no unnecessary glance. The crowd didn't notice that. Not yet. They were too busy watching her clothes, her lack of a plate carrier, the softness of her voice. She didn't look dangerous. She looked like someone who might have taken a wrong turn at a truck stop. Ridge leaned against the bench behind her, grinning like he was hosting a game show. "All right, let's see what you got. What are we working with, a little .22? She crouched and opened the duffel. The zipper sound stopped the murmurs. Because what came out first wasn't a pink pistol or some polymer toy. It was a well-worn Sig Sauer P320, full-sized, with slide modifications. The grip was wrapped in tape, not for decoration, but from years of use. The kind of weapon not bought, but kept, the kind that had been through weather and war. She placed it on the bench like a sacred object. Then she rolled up her left sleeve higher. The room shifted. There, on her upper arm, just beneath the shoulder, inked in stark black, a triangular insignia with a serpent coiled through it, barely visible unless you'd seen it before. But Ridge had never seen it. Not truly. He laughed, as if it was cute. "What's that, girl?" "Some TikTok tattoo." She didn't answer. But the older man at the back, the one who'd stopped smiling earlier, took a single step forward. His voice was gravel. "That's not TikTok." Eyes turned. "That's Delta. Medical." Someone else muttered under their breath. "No way." The girl began loading a mag clean, efficient. She didn't hurry, but the speed was undeniable. Another man near Ridge whispered, "Wait, is that the unit they disbanded officially after Kandahar?" That word hit harder than any shot fired. Now the smiles started to fade. Ridge chuckled, but it was thinner this time. "You been in?" She nodded once. No pride, no theatrics. Just truth. "Then let's see what you've got." And for the first time, the room was quiet. Not out of respect. Not yet. But out of something older. Instinct. Her name was Lena Quinn. But no one at the range knew that yet. To them, she was just the girl in faded jeans and worn boots. Boots nearly 2 sizes too big, scuffed and sun-bleached, soles worn thin near the heel. They weren't hers originally. They had belonged to someone else. Someone she hadn't spoken of in almost 3 years. As she stood behind the line, prepping the drill, she shifted her weight slightly, not from nervousness, but calculation. Her stance was off by a single inch on purpose. She was testing the space. Wind, lighting, angles, things no one around her bothered to consider. Not consciously, anyway. Ridge still leaned against the bench, but the grin had dimmed. He didn't like when the air changed, when laughter gave way to something else. Control was his favorite weapon, and he felt it slipping. "You want a timer? Or you just gonna show off?" "I don't need a timer," she replied. Someone chuckled nervously. Lena adjusted the grip on her weapon. Clean draw. Smooth rest. Her hands bore faint calluses, but no tremble. Her right wrist had a thin white scar just below the edge of her jacket, almost surgical. The older man at the back, his name was Harris, a retired Marine, kept watching. He didn't blink. There was something hauntingly familiar about the way she moved. He'd seen that kind of stillness before, in the eyes of medics who worked under fire. The ones who didn't speak much, but always knew what to do when everything went sideways. Lena glanced toward the target, a standard man-shaped silhouette, center mass still pristine. And then her fingers twitched. Not nerves. Memory. A flash, not a flashback. Not yet. Just the ghost of a field tent, a radio humming, the weight of a larger hand on her shoulder, teaching her how to breathe through recoil, how to measure distance without looking. "You don't fire first, Lena," her grandfather used to say. "You wait until the noise dies. That's when they listen." She'd barely been 10 when he said that. Still too young to hold his rifle properly. But she never forgot his words. Or the feel of those boots. Now they were hers. She squared her shoulders. And the first shot rang out. Not loud, not flashy. Just final. The casing hit the floor before the crowd remembered to breathe. Lena didn't move after the first shot. Just recalibrated. Adjusted nothing. Then came the second, third, fourth. All controlled. Same tempo. Same measured rhythm. Like a pulse. Steady. Unshaken. By the time she fired the 6th round, you could hear flies in the back of the range. Even Ridge, who'd built a persona on being the loudest in any room, found himself saying nothing. She lowered the pistol slowly and hit the slide release. Empty chamber. Safe. Then stepped back. The lane officer, a young man named Rico, ex-Navy, now just pulling shifts to pay rent, walked forward toward the target. He wasn't grinning either. 10 meters out, he stopped. His hand hovered over the paper silhouette, uncertain if he should even touch it. Then he turned back toward the group and held it up. 6 holes. All center mass. Tight group. No drift. No variance. There wasn't a person in the room who didn't know what that meant. You couldn't fake that. Not with shaky nerves. Not by luck. You either had that precision built into your bones, or someone had carved it into you. "Jesus," someone muttered. But Lena just nodded once and holstered the weapon. She didn't smile. Didn't soak in the attention. It wasn't for them. It was for herself. Ridge finally broke the silence. He tried to laugh again, but it didn't come easy. "All right," he said. "You've shot before." No one responded. Lena walked back toward the bench, calm as ever, and unzipped a small pouch. Inside was a cloth roll, old, stained, frayed at the corners. When she unwrapped it, a second magazine and an oil rag fell neatly into place. She started cleaning the slide. Rico approached quietly. That tattoo, he said, not for the crowd, for her. That's legit, isn't it? She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it. He looked down, noticed something poking from the inside flap of her bag. A worn patch, green and black, with a faint bloodstain and the letters Q, M, MED still legible. He didn't touch it. Respect, he said quietly. She just nodded, but her eyes softened, only slightly, and somewhere deep behind them, a memory stirred. It came from near the vending machine. Sharp, nasal, careless. A guy in a black ball cap leaned against the wall, arms crossed, chewing a protein bar like he owned the place. He hadn't watched her shoot. Not really. Just heard the silence and wandered over after. Then, when he caught sight of Lena's size, her frame, the quiet, he grinned. That's it, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. 6 rounds? Come on, Ridge. She blinked at the target, and everyone's acting like she's Jason Bourne. Ridge hesitated. He was used to being the alpha voice here. Now, someone was offering him a lifeline, a chance to regain control of the room. He chuckled, a little too forced. Fair point, Ridge said. Anybody can get lucky once. Lena didn't look up. She kept wiping down the barrel. You military? The man in the ball cap pressed, walking closer. She didn't answer. She said she was. Ridge offered, trying to make it casual. Flashed some tattoo, and everyone froze like she was royalty. Ball cap guy squinted at her arm. That mark? That's just ink. Hell, I've got a Spartan helmet tatted on my calf. Doesn't make me Leonidas. A few quiet laughs returned. Nervous ones. Harris, the older Marine, muttered something under his breath. Didn't repeat it. Rico shook his head and turned away. But Lena finally paused. She reassembled the slide, then stood upright and faced them. Her voice was steady, clear. I didn't say anything. The room fell quiet again. I didn't ask to impress you. I didn't tell a story. I didn't even show the tattoo. She rolled her sleeve back down. You asked. I answered. It wasn't aggressive. Just absolute. Ballcap tried to push again. So what? You expect us to believe you just happened to shoot like that? You come in with your boots and your bag, and what? Think you're better than everyone. Her eyes didn't flinch. No, she said simply. I think I've buried better. The silence hit like a round in the chest. No one laughed this time. Even Ridge blinked, unsure if he heard her right. Lena turned back to her bag, but the older man, Harris, stepped forward. Just once. He looked at Ridge, then the other man, then at her. Let the girl finish her training, he said. Then added, quieter, she's earned it. Ridge didn't like losing control. He'd built his reputation in this town carefully, the veteran turned coach, the guy with the stories and the swagger. But now the attention had drifted. Not because of noise or bravado, but because of her. And she hadn't said 10 words. Still, the silence around Lena was louder than anything else in the room. He walked forward with an exaggerated shrug, his boots stomping heavier than needed. All right, he said. You've got a clean shot group. Respect. He looked her over again, as if reevaluating a weapon he thought was decorative. But drills aren't just about aim. You know that, he added, tone light but edged. It's about movement, discipline, adaptability. That what they taught you, wherever you served? She didn't respond. Tell you what, Ridge said, smiling now. You want to train? Let's run a quick course. You and me. Someone near the back murmured, Ridge? But he was already moving toward the range controller station, tapping buttons. The digital display flickered to life, switching from static targets to a randomized pop-up course with movement zones and low-light transitions. Timed run. 15 targets. Standard 3 failure penalty. You game. He was smiling, but not with his mouth. With his ego. Lena met his eyes for the first time. No prizes? She asked quietly. No prizes, he answered. No bragging rights. None at all, he smirked. She nodded once. Then I'm in. Gasps didn't erupt. This wasn't a movie. But everyone leaned in now. Attention no longer scattered, no longer entertained. Focused. Because if she did well again, it wouldn't be luck. Rico walked over, whispering, You sure? Lena didn't reply. She just unzipped the side of her bag and revealed something no one expected. A laminated card. Slightly bent. Faded signature. Issued by Fort Bragg. Range Supervisor Certification, Rico read softly. Level 4. He exhaled. That wasn't beginner status. That was someone who used to run courses like this. Ridge saw it too. And for the first time, his jaw tightened. Just slightly. You first? She asked him. He paused. Nah, he said. Ladies first. Lena stepped forward, loaded her mag, slipped on foam earplugs, and the air began to thicken, not from fear, not from tension, from something older. Anticipation. The floor buzzed faintly beneath her boots as the course lit up. Overhead fluorescence dimmed, replaced by flickering strips that simulated low-light conditions. Not pitch black, but enough to distort depth and make casual shooters second-guess themselves. To most, it was just a gimmick. To Lena, it was muscle memory. The moment the first buzzer blared, her entire presence shifted, not into aggression, but into alignment. Everything else fell away. The first 2 targets popped simultaneously, different elevations. 2 shots. 1 breath. Left shoulder roll. Fire. Pivot. Fire. She didn't shout. She didn't grunt. No wasted noise. Just the gentle, controlled exhale between every 3-round burst. Tap, tap, tap. Reset. Tap, tap, tap. She transitioned through the lane with economy of motion that almost looked rehearsed. But it wasn't. It was earned. She didn't walk like she had something to prove. She moved like someone who had already survived the proving grounds, and simply hadn't talked about it. Harris, still at the back, now had his hat in his hand. He didn't even realize he'd taken it off. His lips were tight. There was something behind his eyes, recognition, or maybe regret. Ridge stood with arms folded, trying to find some flaw. Some moment where he could claim her success was circumstantial. But she gave him nothing. No mistakes. When the final steel target dropped with a satisfying clang, she didn't spin around triumphantly. She didn't gesture to the crowd. She just ejected the mag, cleared the chamber, and walked back to the bench like she'd done it 1,000 times. Because she had. Rico clicked the results on the control screen, eyes wide. No penalties. 14 seconds under par. That's Tier 1 timing. Someone behind him muttered. She didn't even run. No, she hadn't. She hadn't needed to. Her precision replaced speed. Her posture replaced performance. Ridge stepped forward, slow clap building, trying to make it look like support, but it rang hollow. Well, he said, forcing a grin. Guess I better bring my A-game. Lena sat back down, gently placing her sidearm on a towel. She didn't reply. She just looked at the course. Then, with the barest trace of irony in her voice, she said, Don't forget your ear protection. Ridge stepped into the lane like it was a stage. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck. Showmanship. Confidence. His followers, the regulars, the weekend warriors, murmured words of encouragement. But even they sounded unsure now, like players trying to remember which team they were on. He slapped a fresh mag into his Glock. All right, sweetheart, he called back. Watch closely. I'll show you how we really train around here. Lena didn't look up. She was cleaning her barrel again. When the buzzer sounded, Ridge launched forward like a sprinter. Loud, decisive. Pop, pop, miss. He swore under his breath. Reset. Faster this time. Too fast. Tap. Tap. Overcorrect. Tap. His stance was strong, but his breathing wasn't. The earlier tension, the one he helped build, now worked against him. He was chasing her shadow, and everyone saw it. Every clumsy shift. Every hesitation at the next target. Every glance at the timer. The lights flickered just enough to throw off depth perception, and he stumbled a half step on a turn. Regained it quickly, but not quickly enough. By the time he reached the final target, his last shot hit the edge instead of center. Clang. He stepped back, jaw tight, chest heaving. Rico didn't say anything, just pressed a button on the console. Time, Ridge asked. The screen lit up. For penalties. 7 seconds over par. Dead silence. Then someone coughed. Ridge turned back toward Lena, trying to save face. Not my best run, he muttered. She met his eyes, expression unreadable. Not your worst either, she replied softly. And something in her tone wasn't mockery, it was observation. Measured. Honest. Ridge flinched, then looked away. The mood shifted. No more tension. No mockery. Just recalibration. Every person in that room, whether they liked it or not, was adjusting their perception of her. Quietly. Uncomfortably. Because truth doesn't shout. It waits. Harris stepped forward. That was good shooting, he said. To her. She nodded. You serve with Quinn? He asked suddenly. Her eyes flickered, just briefly. He was my grandfather. That changed everything. Harris straightened slightly, like a man standing in formation out of habit. Damn. I knew him. She didn't say thank you. She didn't need to. The weight of the name had already filled the room. Lena sat quietly on the bench, wiping down the last components of her sidearm as the others stood suspended in a kind of uncertain respect. The jokes had died. The grins had faded. Something solemn had entered the air, and it lingered like smoke after fire. The name Quinn still echoed in Harris's voice. He hadn't said it with reverence. Not exactly. More like a man acknowledging a ghost. He was your grandfather, Harris said again, softer now. Combat Medical Corps. 18 Delta. I met him once. In Marja. 09. Our unit got pinned, and he didn't wait for clearance. Just ran straight in. He chuckled, but it cracked halfway. Damn idiot. Lena said nothing. She didn't have to. Her fingers brushed over the faded patch on her bag again. The one with the bloodstain. Her thumb lingered on the initials. Q. M. Quinn Matthew. Memories weren't loud with her. They didn't scream. They hummed. The tent had been dim. Flies buzzed near the lights. She was 13. Her grandfather was hunched over a small wooden table, gear sprawled out, sharpening a field knife by lantern light. The air smelled like desert and iodine. You see this? He'd asked, holding up a map, frayed and taped. This ain't a battlefield. It's a puzzle. Terrain's got edges. People don't. That's why we train the mind before the trigger. She nodded like she understood, though she didn't fully. Not yet. He turned to her. You listen more than you speak. That's rare. I just don't know what to say, she'd replied. He smiled gently. That's when the smart ones shut up. Later that night, she'd seen him refuse a promotion. Said the higher you went, the farther you got from the field. He didn't want medals. He wanted to be there, where the blood was real and the decisions mattered. He never told war stories. Just taught. Quietly. Always hands-on. Always present. Until he didn't come home. And all they sent back was his journal. And those boots. Now, back in the present, Lena blinked the memory away. Harris stood quietly. Didn't know he had a granddaughter. He didn't talk about family, she said. Neither did I. He looked down at her rifle patch. Then nodded, not out of sympathy, out of understanding. After the run, most of the crowd drifted toward the exit. Some in silence. Others in low murmurs. The kind people use when something sacred just happened and they're unsure whether to speak or kneel. But Lena stayed seated. She wasn't done. Not with the drills. Not with the day. There was something else still with her, not unfinished, but unspoken. And it sat heavier than the pistol she'd just cleaned. She reached into the bottom of the duffel and pulled out a small, olive-drab journal. Frayed corners. Cloth-bound. Smelled faintly of sand and fuel. Harris saw it from where he stood and took a half-step forward. You still carry his book? She nodded. Quiet. She didn't open it right away. Just held it in her lap. Rico approached, slower this time. Is that your grandfather's? Lena traced the initials on the bottom corner. Kyunkyu. He never used a phone, she said. Didn't trust anything that plugged into a wall. Said machines forget. Paper remembers. She finally opened the cover. The first page was yellowed, stained in one corner. There were names. Dozens of them. Some were clean. Others scratched out. Some had check marks. Others had nothing at all. What is this? Rico asked. Lena didn't answer directly. She flipped halfway through, to a page marked only by a single red thread, looped there by hand. A name circled in pen. Beneath it, coordinates. A date. A single note, in handwriting sharp as his voice had once been. Find her. Teach her. Harris leaned in. He swallowed hard. She was his last student? Lena nodded. I was 14. She didn't say how they trained, how the drills began at 0500, rain or sun, or how he'd refused to let her shoot until she could strip the weapon in complete darkness. She didn't say how many times she'd cried behind the storage shed where no one could hear, afraid she'd never measure up. But she had measured up, because now she was the last one who remembered the names in that book, and she hadn't added to it. Until this morning. She reached into her bag again, pulled out a pen. On the back page, beneath the last entry, she wrote, Ridge Ridley, Lane 5. Ego. No malice. Just noise. Not ready yet. And then she closed the book. The shooting range was quieter now, but not empty. The usual clatter of voices and laughter had all but disappeared, replaced by a thick, almost tangible silence. It hovered in the air like dust settling on old photographs. Heavy, laden with unspoken truths. Lena moved deliberately, gathering her gear with steady hands. Each motion was precise, purposeful, a ritual, almost. It was as if every click of a magazine locking into place, every zip of her bag, tethered her back to a world that few here could ever understand. She caught Ridge's eyes from across the room. His usual cocky grin was gone, replaced by something she hadn't seen before, uncertainty. The bravado he wore like armor was cracking at the edges. For the first time that afternoon, she saw him searching, silently recalculating what it meant to be good enough, in a place where silence spoke louder than any gunshot. Around her, the bystanders shifted uneasily. The same people who had laughed and whispered behind her back now exchanged furtive glances, a tacit acknowledgement of their earlier misjudgment. The ball-cap guy, Ridge's followers, all caught in a moment of self-reflection none of them asked for but couldn't avoid. Lena's thoughts drifted inward. She wasn't thinking about the crowd or the challenges ahead. Instead, she found herself remembering the quietest lessons of all, those her grandfather had given her. He never shouted orders. He never boasted of his service. But through every drill, every silent failure, every patient correction, he had etched discipline into her very bones. Discipline isn't loud. His voice echoed softly in her memory. It's steady. It's knowing your limits and holding them. Her fingers brushed the faded combat tattoo on her arm, tracing the edges with reverence. That ink wasn't a badge of honor or a boast. It was a mark of sacrifice and resilience, a legacy of quiet strength that few would ever understand. Her voice cut through the silence, low but resolute. "I'm not here to prove anything," she said, meeting Ridge's eyes squarely. "I'm here to keep a promise." Ridge's jaw relaxed, the tension in his shoulders easing just slightly. For a moment, he seemed to understand that this wasn't a contest. It wasn't a game. "Then let's train," he said quietly. "No showmanship. No ego." The energy in the room shifted again. It didn't return to noise or laughter. Instead, it became something more rare, something powerful. Purpose. Because respect, true respect, is never given freely. It is earned. Slowly. Through silence and steel. Through presence and patience. Through the quiet acknowledgement of what it truly means to carry a legacy. And Lena Quinn was ready. The fluorescent lights above flickered as dusk crept closer, casting long, wavering shadows across the cold concrete floor of the range. The once bustling crowd had thinned, leaving behind only a handful of witnesses who now watched with a new, quieter kind of attention. Gone was the laughter and smirks. In their place lingered a mix of curiosity, doubt, and an unspoken respect. The atmosphere was dense, charged with anticipation, like the calm before a coming storm. Lena stood by the bench, methodically reloading her gear. Every movement was deliberate, practiced, steeped in a quiet confidence that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. The faded journal rested heavily inside her bag, a tangible link to her grandfather's legacy, while the tattoo on her arm throbbed with meaning beneath the worn fabric of her sleeve. This was no longer about proving herself to strangers. It was about honoring a promise long kept in silence. Ridge approached cautiously, the bravado he wore like armor earlier now stripped down to something more genuine. He cleared his throat, eyes locking with hers. "You ready for the next drill?" His voice held a trace of respect, tempered by the challenge he was about to issue. She nodded, steady and calm. "This time," Ridge continued, "we're adding movement. Targets won't just pop up in a line. You'll have to transition, lateral shifts, backward steps, reloads on the move. Real test of control and composure under pressure." Lena smiled faintly, a small curve of lips that hinted at confidence, but no arrogance. "Sounds like my kind of challenge." The remaining spectators exchanged glances, their murmurs subdued and respectful. There was no room now for mockery, only quiet anticipation. The tension in the air tightened, as if everyone was collectively holding their breath. When the buzzer sounded, Lena moved. Her boots barely whispered against the floor. Each step was precise, measured, a dance born from countless hours of training, discipline, and survival. She flowed through the course with the patience of a hunter and the calm resolve of a soldier who'd seen more than her years should allow. The shots that followed were crisp and controlled. No frantic urgency, no wasted effort. She breathed through each burst, her body perfectly synced with her weapon, the space, and the moment. Beneath the surface, memories stirred. A field hospital under fire, the weight of a comrade's life resting in her hands, the cold stillness between bursts of chaos where real courage took root. Ridge stood silently, the flicker of admiration unmistakable in his eyes. His earlier arrogance melted into a grudging respect. As Lena finished the drill and reloaded without looking back, the crowd remained hushed. The verdict was unspoken, but understood. Respect had been earned. Lena's boots made barely a sound as she stepped forward again, the weight of the day settling firmly on her shoulders, yet her movements remained light, almost effortless. The air in the shooting range had shifted irrevocably. What had started as curiosity and skepticism had now thickened into something far more potent, a silent acknowledgement that something remarkable was unfolding. The room was heavy with anticipation, a collective breath held tight like the calm before a gathering storm. Ridge watched from the sidelines, arms crossed, face unreadable but tight. His usual bravado, the confident swagger that had dominated the room all afternoon, was now tempered by an unspoken respect. He was searching, trying to find any sign of weakness or mistake in Lena's form, but there was nothing. She was a wall, steady, unyielding, and precise. The course flickered to life with a new challenge. Unpredictable target sequences, forcing shooters to adapt quickly. The lights popped in rapid succession, demanding sharp reflexes and flawless transitions. There was no room for hesitation. Lena moved through the course with a grace that was almost haunting. Each step was deliberate and efficient, a silent dance honed through countless hours of training, the kind only found beyond civilian shooting ranges. Her breaths came slow and steady, her fingers squeezing the trigger with perfect timing. No wasted motion, no wasted breath. Watching her was like witnessing a well-rehearsed symphony where every note was exact and every pause measured. The crowd shifted uncomfortably as the reality settled in. This wasn't just skill. This was mastery born of experience. Beneath her calm exterior, memories flickered briefly. A night patrol under moonless skies, the acrid smell of diesel and gunpowder, the cold weight of a fallen comrade's dog tags pressed in her palm. The soft, steady voice of her grandfather echoed in her mind. Every move counts. Every second can mean the difference. Every shot was a quiet tribute, a solemn promise carried through years of sacrifice and discipline. The final target clanged down, and Lena exhaled slowly, eyes sharp and unflinching. No victory dance. No words. Just presence. For a moment, the room held its breath. Then slowly, the crowd exhaled, a collective release of tension and awe. Ridge stepped forward, voice low but sincere, stripped of all pretense. "You're damn good." Lena simply nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering. In that moment, the perception of everyone there shifted permanently. They were no longer spectators mocking an unknown girl. They had borne witness to the quiet strength of a warrior who had reclaimed her dignity, not with noise or violence, but with grace, skill, and unwavering presence. The silence in the room thickened as Lena slowly rose from the bench. Every eye followed her movements with a mixture of anticipation and unease. Without a word, she rolled up the sleeve of her jacket, revealing the tattoo that had been hidden beneath fabric and assumption all afternoon. The design was striking. A Spartan helmet, battle-worn and cracked, framed by twisted barbed wire and laurel leaves that symbolized both struggle and honor. Below the helmet, in precise block letters, were the words, "In valor, there is strength." It was not just ink on skin. It was a map of pain and perseverance, a legacy etched into flesh. Ridge's bravado wavered, and for a fleeting moment, he looked like a man confronted with something larger than himself. The swagger drained from his posture, replaced by an instinctual respect. His voice, when it came, was barely audible. "It's real." Lena held his gaze without hesitation, her eyes steady, unwavering. "It's mine," she said simply, with no room for debate or disbelief. The murmur that spread across the crowd wasn't just recognition, it was transformation. The same people who had mocked her mere moments ago now looked upon her with a quiet reverence. Rico, standing next to the older Marine Harris, exchanged a glance. "That patch," Rico said softly, nodding toward the faded insignia on her bag. "That tattoo. You're not just trained. You carry a legacy." Lena's hands moved with practiced care as she reached into her bag and pulled out a worn dog tag. Its edges were smoothed by years of handling, its chain fragile yet strong. She held it up, the dim light catching the engraved letters. Matthew Quinn, 18 Delta, fallen. A breath seemed to escape the room. She lowered her arm and looked down for a moment, the weight of the memory settling visibly in her posture. Then she lifted her eyes, her voice quiet but firm. I carry his memory, his lessons, his discipline, and I carry forward the promise I made to him. The room was silent, not with awkwardness or tension, but with something far deeper. A collective moment of respect, a shared understanding of sacrifice and resilience. Her presence filled the space, quiet, dignified, unshakable. For the first time all afternoon, the laughter was gone. In its place was honor. The tattoo wasn't just a mark on Lena's arm anymore. It was a symbol that transformed the entire atmosphere in the room. It carried weight, history, and truth, pressing on the air with silent authority. The crowd, once ready to dismiss her, now felt the undeniable shift. What they had thought was just a girl asking to train was someone who embodied a legacy far deeper than any of them had anticipated. Ridge swallowed hard, his usual cocky grin nowhere to be found. Instead, his eyes held a new, serious light, an unspoken acknowledgement that he had misjudged her. The bravado he wore like armor had cracked, revealing a man who was suddenly uncertain. The room held its breath in that heavy silence, the kind that speaks louder than any shout. Finally, Ridge spoke, his voice low and deliberate, carrying the weight of a challenge and an invitation all at once. So, he said, locking eyes with Lena, you want to train here. You want to prove you belong. Lena's gaze was steady, unwavering. Her voice was calm, but beneath the quiet surface lay a steel resolve that resonated with every word. I don't need to prove anything. I'm here to train, to get better. A flicker of respect crossed Ridge's face. He nodded slowly, the edge of his skepticism softening. Good, he said, because being part of this isn't just about shooting straight or knowing your gear. He glanced around at the small crowd of shooters, then returned his gaze to Lena. It's about mindset, discipline, control. He took a deliberate step closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Are you ready for that? Lena didn't hesitate, her voice firm and sure. Yes. That simple affirmation seemed to break the tension in the room. The collective breath that had been held so tightly was finally released, replaced by a quiet anticipation for what was to come. Harris stepped forward quietly and placed a steady hand on Lena's shoulder. It was a gesture without pity or condescension, one born from shared experience and respect. You carry more than a tattoo, he said softly. You carry a history that most people don't see, but we respect it. Lena gave a slight nod. The moment wasn't about boasting or ego. It was about acceptance earned through silence, presence, and unshakable resolve. Ridge stepped back, the unspoken challenge hanging in the air like a promise. The training, the true test, had only just begun. The shooting range fell into a rhythm as the next drill began. This time, the challenge wasn't just about hitting targets. It was about endurance, focus, and unyielding will. Lena moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had lived through far more than what these walls could ever know. Every step was measured, precise. Her boots barely whispered against the concrete floor as she approached the first target. The recoil was a familiar weight, the gun an extension of her own arm. The targets flickered in unpredictable sequences, left to right, up and down, near and far, demanding instantaneous adaptation. But Lena's fingers, trained through years of relentless discipline, moved fluidly. Her breath stayed steady. Each squeeze of the trigger was deliberate, controlled, a whisper of power. Around her, the crowd watched in reverent silence. The earlier skeptics and mockers had quieted, replaced by observers who sensed something extraordinary unfolding. Even Ridge, who had once been loud and confident, now stood quietly at the edge of the range, his eyes fixed on her form, his expression unreadable but undeniably respectful. In Lena's mind, memories flickered, not tales of battlefield glory, but quiet moments steeped in sacrifice. The crackling voice of her grandfather echoed in her thoughts. It's not about the fight, but the courage to stand when all seems lost. Each shot was more than a mark on a target. It was a tribute, a silent vow carried on steady hands and a steady heart. The final target dropped with a crisp clang, and Lena lowered her weapon with quiet dignity. There was no celebration, no flourish, just the calm presence of someone who had earned her place through unwavering commitment. The room remained still, the weight of the moment settling over everyone present. Her legacy was no longer just ink on skin or a whispered name. It was alive, pulsing through every controlled breath, every exact movement. She had earned her place, not with noise or boast, but with presence, with honor. As Lena stepped away from the firing line, the room was swallowed by a silence that felt dense and almost sacred. It was the kind of silence that falls not from emptiness but from the weight of understanding, when words no longer suffice to express what the heart quietly acknowledges. Every pair of eyes that had once narrowed with skepticism now softened, carrying a new awareness of the truth that had unfolded before them. Ridge stood frozen for a moment, his usual confident swagger stripped away, replaced by a quiet, respectful posture. The arrogance that had once defined him was replaced with something humbler, something that recognized the magnitude of what Lena represented. His gaze met hers, not with challenge, but with acknowledgement. Around the room, the crowd shifted. The earlier laughter and whispers of doubt were replaced by nods and exchanged glances that carried unspoken respect. The shooters, the casual observers, even the quiet veterans among them, all seemed to understand that they had witnessed more than just skill. They had witnessed a legacy come to life. Harris, who had observed from the sidelines with a knowing eye, was the first to break the silence. His voice was low and steady, carrying the weight of experience. "She's one of us," he said. "More than that, she's a keeper of something we sometimes forget, the discipline, the sacrifice, the legacy." No one dared contradict him. The tattoo on Lena's arm, once a curiosity or cause for suspicion, now stood as a proud emblem of belonging. It was a mark of survival, of silent battles fought far beyond the sight of those who mocked or doubted. It spoke of history, pain, and perseverance. Somewhere in the back, a voice whispered, "She carries the name, the bloodline." Lena's eyes met Harris's in a brief, silent exchange, a conversation without words. Their mutual respect needed no explanation. It was a bond forged in hardship, sacrifice, and unyielding commitment. Then, slowly, Ridge stepped forward. His hand extended, not as a challenge, but as a genuine gesture of acceptance and recognition. "Welcome to the team," he said quietly. Lena accepted the handshake with steady resolve. There were no smiles, no grand declarations, just presence, quiet strength that spoke volumes without uttering a single word. In that still, heavy silence, respect was reclaimed, not through loud displays, triumphs, or boastful declarations, but through the dignity of a woman who had endured, who carried history in her veins and strength in her stance. The crowd remained hushed, not in shock, but in deep, heartfelt recognition. She belonged, and now everyone knew it. The room remained still, the weight of the moment lingering like a thick fog. The earlier noise, the chatter, the taunts, the disbelief, had dissolved completely, replaced by a profound silence that spoke volumes. Lena's presence filled the space not with words or gestures, but with a calm, unshakable authority. It was the kind of quiet power that commands respect simply by existing, without demanding it. No one moved to break the silence. No one sought to regain control or redirect attention. Instead, the crowd stood in collective awe, their breath slowed, their eyes softened by recognition. This was more than a moment. It was a reckoning, a truth laid bare without fanfare, a testament to discipline, endurance, and legacy that transcended language. Lena's gaze dipped briefly, almost in reverence, before lifting with steady confidence. She carried more than the inked tattoo or the worn dog tags. They were symbols, yes, but beneath them was something far greater, a legacy carved through silent sacrifice, relentless training, and an unyielding spirit. Each step she took, every controlled breath, echoed the countless hours of struggle behind her quiet exterior. Ridge, who had once ruled the room with bravado and sharp words, now stepped aside. The unspoken leader yielded ground to this quiet force, his posture softened, his voice absent. The respect in his eyes was measured and real, born only from witnessing something profound unfold before him. Slowly, The crowd began to disperse, but the shift was palpable. Conversations resumed, quieter now, tinged with a newfound respect and humility. The room had changed. Respect was no longer a fleeting or forced gesture. It had been earned, lived through the undeniable presence of someone who had carried history and strength without a word. Lena gathered her things with practiced ease, each movement deliberate, a dance balanced perfectly between humility and inner strength. As she turned to leave, Harris caught her eye. No words were exchanged, only a nod, heavy with mutual recognition and honor. It was a quiet moment, an unspoken transfer of respect that needed no explanation. Outside, the evening air was crisp and still. Lena paused for a moment, fingers tracing the familiar tattoo now hidden beneath her sleeve once more. The promise it symbolized remained unbroken and unshaken. She walked away with dignity reclaimed, not through noise or conflict, but through the silent power of presence, resilience, and honor. Outside the shooting range, the world seemed to slow down, as if the night itself was honoring the quiet dignity that Lena carried with her. The city's distant hum was softened, muffled beneath the cool blanket of evening, and the streetlights cast long, gentle shadows that danced softly across the pavement. She paused beneath a pale, flickering street lamp, the chill of the evening air tugging gently at her jacket sleeve. Her fingers instinctively brushed the fabric, carefully concealing the tattoo once more, the emblem that had shifted the course of the day. Though hidden, it was never forgotten. It remained a silent symbol, etched deep into her identity and her past. Lena's mind drifted to the worn journal resting safely in her bag, her grandfather's legacy in ink and paper. It was filled with more than tactics and training. It held the lessons of resilience, humility, and strength forged in silence. She had carried those lessons through every hardship, every moment of doubt and dismissal, every time the world had laughed before realizing the truth. The events at the range had been more than a trial of marksmanship. They had been a crucible for reclaiming honor long overlooked. It was a reminder that dignity is earned not with noise or grand declarations, but with the quiet strength to stand tall when no one is watching. Lena's breath deepened, steady and deliberate. The weight of her legacy still rested on her shoulders, but it no longer felt like a burden. Instead, it was a mantle she bore with quiet pride, a steady flame burning against the dark. A stray cat slinked silently from the shadows nearby, pausing to regard her with curious eyes before slipping away into the night. A subtle, almost poetic reminder that survival often meant moving unseen, yet always with purpose and intent. She turned toward the path that led home, her footsteps measured, steady, and unhurried. There were no eyes on her now, no applause needed, only the steady rhythm of a life lived with honor reclaimed. The world may have laughed at her request to train earlier that day, but now, the laughter had fallen away, replaced by a silence full of respect. Lena Quinn, quiet, resolute, unbroken, walked forward into the night, carrying a legacy no one could ever take from her. The morning sun filtered softly through the narrow window of Lena's modest apartment, casting warm golden hues over the worn wooden table where an old journal lay open. The pages were yellowed with age, ink faded in places but still legible, a silent testament to a lifetime of experiences, lessons, and sacrifices. This was her grandfather's journal, filled with stories not just of war and combat, but of the quiet strength and resilience that had carried him through the darkest hours. Lena sat alone, tracing the lines of a passage written decades ago, words that spoke of strength found in silence, of courage that didn't need to shout to be heard. True valor, the passage read, is not in the noise of battle, but in the steadfastness of one who stands firm when all else falls. Those words resonated deeply within her, carrying a weight both comforting and daunting. Outside, the city was waking, unaware of the invisible battles fought the day before, a trial not of weapons or brute force, but of dignity, honor, and reclaiming respect long denied. Lena knew that while the world moved on, the scars and triumphs of those moments would remain etched inside her. She reached into the pocket of her jacket and pulled out the dog tags she had worn quietly throughout the day. The cool metal was smooth against her fingers, worn by years but holding every ounce of the promise she made to her grandfather, to carry his legacy forward, not with fanfare, but with quiet, unwavering resolve. The tattoo on her arm remained hidden beneath her sleeve, a private symbol of the battles she had endured and the strength she embodied. It was a mark of identity, yes, but also a reminder that her journey was far from over. As she stood and prepared to face the day, Lena took a deep breath, steady, controlled, the same calm that had carried her through countless moments of doubt and challenge. Every motion was deliberate, a dance between humility and quiet power. Before leaving, she paused at the doorway, glancing back at the simple room where memories and lessons converged. The weight of her legacy was not a burden, but a mantle she bore with pride and solemn responsibility. The world might never fully grasp the depth of her story, nor the silent sacrifices made by those like her. But that didn't matter. What mattered was the knowledge carried in her heart, the unspoken truths of strength, honor, and resilience. With steady steps, Lena stepped out into the morning light, blending seamlessly into the city's pulse. She was a quiet warrior, a keeper of a timeless story woven through generations. Her legacy was not shouted from rooftops or celebrated in grand arenas. It lived in the silent strength of those who bore it, unseen, unshaken, and forever enduring. And as the city stirred around her, Lena walked forward, not just as a woman with a combat tattoo on her arm, but as a living testament to the power of presence, dignity, and the enduring spirit of those who came before. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive tactical stories.